Hi, welcome to this look at the UK 14-day weather forecast. Things have been pretty cold recently for April, and even parts of southern England saw snow in recent days. Now, are things set to become more spring-like in the next week or two? Well, we start off with an area of high pressure over the UK, so the Arctic flow, which brought the really cold conditions, has been cut off, but temperatures during the days and nights are still below where they should be at this time of year. As we've run through the coming days, what we can see is high pressure remains in charge for a while, but there is a signal for things to begin to change this weekend, at least in the north and west. And here we are at 18 GMT on Saturday, the 17th of April. By then, we can see wet and windy weather pushing into western Scotland across Northern Ireland. There is uncertainty about the southeastwards progression of this. On this particular sequence, what we'll see happen is it does move southeastwards early next week, the next set of frontal systems coming in from the Atlantic. But by 21 GMT on Monday, the 19th of April, which is what we can see is the rain is pushing southeastwards, but towards the end there, by Tuesday, it clears southwards, but there doesn't look like being a great deal of rain in the southeast and central England because those fronts will be decaying, and then high pressures building back across the UK once they move away. Just to take a look at what the Canadian model's shown in terms of rainfall, because the sequence was the GFS, that's the North American deterministic model. Here we are at 21 GMT on Monday, the 19th of April, and what we can see is the rain on this one is really in northern and western parts of the United Kingdom, and as it's moving southwards, it's also decaying, and I think on this particular model, and you really don't see any rain at all making it into the southeastern corner. So I'll look at that in a little bit more detail with the ensemble data. But first, just a quick look at the air mass profile. Here we are again, going back to the start, 12 GMT on Wednesday, the 14th of April. And we can see the high pressure area. And under it, there is still fairly cold upper level air shown by the blues. If we move forwards to Monday, the 19th of April, what we can see by then is the blues have been replaced by green, so indicating the air mass has warmed up somewhat by then. But if you look to the northwest, this is where the Atlantic's beginning to show its hand again. And then we go forward to 18 GMT on Tuesday, the 20th of April. What we can see is that Atlantic influence is actually bringing some colder air back down from the northwest across northern and eastern parts of the United Kingdom. And so we're seeing the blues returning. Then we've got the high pressure building in behind it from the west again. So what all that means if it happens like this in terms of 2 metre temperatures, here we are at 15 GMT on Thursday the 15th of April, and can see them, it's not really at all warm for time of year. Temperatures making it into double figures in places, but they are on the low side. You can often add a couple of degrees to the values which the GFS show, so 12, 13s be quite likely, maybe 14s or 15s in one or two places, but not particularly warm. Jump ahead to Monday, the 19th of April. That's and what we're looking at here is effectively across the southern and central parts of Britain. It's before that potentially cooler air has returned southwards, southeastwards. So we can see here temperatures of around 14, maybe 15, 16, 17 even if it's correct. And it's cooler in the northwest as those frontal systems are pushing downwards. So perhaps Monday will be the warmest day in the short term, according to this. And as we can see by Tuesday, the 20th, temperatures have dipped again. They're back down to around 10, 11, 12, 13s across much of the UK as that frontal system pushes southeastwards. As I say, it may not bring much, if any, rain, but it does look like there will be somewhat cooler air returning behind it. In terms of nighttime temperatures, we're getting to the time of year when these are very important for farmers and growers. I'm just putting these charts up to illustrate the potential rather than to give specifics as we go forward. But on the left, it's actually for 06 GMT Friday the 16th. Minimums have -2 in southern and central parts of the United Kingdom, so pretty cold, a widespread frost across much of the country if it's correct. By Wednesday, the chart on the right, what we can see is minimums. There are a little higher, but still it's flagging up the possibility of frost being quite a widespread risk, and not only in the northern half of the UK, even in the south here we're seeing temperatures dipping to around freezing point. Now, just to take a look at some of the other models to see whether they support the general scenario at days 10, which is for high pressure to be building in again after that potential incursion from the Atlantic. This is the ECM, the European Deterministic Model, and what we can see is that high pressure is indeed influential, but the blues over the UK, blues and light greens there, indicating rather chilly air. We'll take a look at the Canadian model, the GEM, for the same time, so Saturday the 24th of April. We can see here high pressure is also influential, but the oranges and yellows here, greens, they're all indicating a warmer air mass. So there would be the potential for higher temperatures if this turns out to be correct. And in actual fact, several recent runs of the Canadian model have gone for this type of scenario where we are beginning to pull in warmer air from the south and southeast. Okay, so to firm up a little bit, I'll take a look at some of the ensemble data. So really here we're going to be focusing on day 7 and beyond, so the second week. What we can see is the air mass profile. So this is European ensemble. We can see initially it's pretty cold, as I've discussed, but temperatures are climbing, and the trend there of rising air mass temperatures continues more or less unabated through the 10-day forecast period. I think just one point to draw attention to here is the thick green line on this shows the operational run. I just showed the chart from it a moment ago, and you can see there it does actually dip below the purple line, so it's which is the mean of all the runs in the ensemble. So it's indicating that the operational run was really at the very cold end of the ensemble, around about the 22nd, the 23rd of April. So there is that uncertainty just about whether the cooler air from the northwest will be pushing its way down across all parts of the United Kingdom. As I say, it may well be that the operational run, which was showing that, is something of an outlier with not a great deal of support. But to try and look at that and frame that in a little bit more context, here's the American ensemble, the GEFS. I'm going to start with looking at Belfast and go quickly round the UK. What we can see here is that on the upper half of the chart we're looking at air mass temperatures, and indeed they do increase in the short to medium term, but there is a signal for them to dip. There's not all of the runs in the ensemble are showing this, but quite a few of them are indicating that that cooler air from the northwest will be pushing down. And then beyond that, they do recover again. You can see that the purple line, which is the mean of all the runs in the ensemble, rises back above the thick black line, which is the 30-year average for these 850 HPA air mass temperatures. So here we're seeing the rising temperature trend, a dip, and then probably recovering again. In terms of rainfall, it's quite interesting because it's mainly dry start as with the high pressure. Then that Atlantic incursion here, quite a few rainfall spikes appearing, so potential for rain is pretty high at this stage. Then we see it turning drier again as high pressure builds in from west, suggesting there's good support in the ensemble for that scenario. But there towards the end, from about the 24th to 25th of April, number of rain spikes again begins to increase, suggesting the transition to more changeable weather. It's a similar pattern for Glasgow. Obviously we're staying in the northwest here, so you would expect it to be roughly the same, and indeed it is. Now, coming down to Cardiff, we're still quite a long way west, but obviously further south. Here we see a slight difference, and you see the air mass temperatures do recover in the short term, but then there isn't really much support for that dip to cooler conditions. I think what this really points towards is the uncertainty about just how far southeastwards that cooler air mass will progress. It might just affect northern and eastern parts of the UK, with areas to the southwest in Wales, for example, and Cornwall and Devon, perhaps staying under less cool or warmer air. There is uncertainty there. Rainfall profile, again, it's similar but not as wet. There are some spikes appearing there, but again, what we're seeing is the less of the Atlantic incursion making its way into the southern half of the UK. Later on in the period, the number of rain spikes increases again from about the 25th, but it doesn't look particularly wet. Now, finally, on these GEFS 16-day charts is the London plot. Profile is actually quite similar to Cardiff in terms of the air mass. We don't really see that dip. It's a few of the runs there are bringing in that dip, for example, the operational run, but it's not really well supported. The operational run being the GFS, which the sequence I showed initially was using data from. Therefore, it's really suggesting that, again, that Atlantic incursion through the first weekend of forecast period may not really make it all the way down to southern England. And in fact, we can see in the rainfall part of this plot on the lower half, there are very, very few rainfall spikes appearing. It looks pretty dry. And beyond, and towards the end of the run from the 25th of April, there are more spikes showing up. But again, it still looks quite dry overall. So perhaps an increasing chance of showers of longer spells of rain towards the end of the 16 days, but by no means wet. Temperatures at the 2 metre level, I'm going to show these anomaly charts. I think they're quite useful, again from the GEFS. The first one is days 0 to 5, so it's aggregating all the temperature forecasts from the model for all the time slots for the first 5 days. The blues are showing below the 30-year mean with yellows and oranges above it. And what we can see quite clearly is most of the UK is remaining cooler or colder than average by a degree or two through the first 5 days. Now, if you look at days 5 to 10, there is a change here. Those blues have more or less gone. There's a little bit of blue shading there over northern England, but generally there's not much of an anomaly there at all. Temperatures at the 2 metre level, so down at the surface, the ones we experience, are back to where they should be. And given the fact the GFS, GEFS often under forecast maximum temperatures by a degree or two, it's quite possible we'll actually be a little bit above average through this period. Now, the final one in this particular type of chart is for days 10 to 15, and by then there's a signal for the blues, light blues, to return. It's taken at face value, it's going for temperatures 1 or 2 Celsius below the 30-year average. As I say, though, with its tendency to under forecast by a degree or two, it may well be that we end up with temperatures through this period which are very close to the average. I think it's just worth pointing out, though, that it means daytime and nighttime taken together, so it doesn't preclude the possibility of rather warm days and rather cold nights. So even though we could be looking at close to average temperatures here, there would be the potential for night frost to remain a risk. And in fact, if we just look at the 2 metre temperature graph for starting for London, this is showing minimum forecasts from each run in the GEFS model for the next 16 days. What we can see is, and I've annotated this and I've put a frost risk line right across the chart. What we can see is that in the short term, quite a few of the runs, most of them are hinting at the possibility of frost, or even being quite confident that frost is a risk in southern England. We then see the 2 metre temperatures picking up. But if you look there towards the end, from about the 24th of April onwards, there are a number of red dots appearing below that blue line, which I've used to highlight as roughly the cut-off point for where ground frost becomes a risk. I'd say generally 3 or 4 Celsius or below can result in ground frost forming. It doesn't have to be 0 Celsius or lower. That's an air frost, which is somewhat different, of course, because the ground cools quicker than the air above it. So even towards the end of this period, we see the risk of ground frost according to some of the runs. It is a minority. I'll make that point clear. Most of them are keeping nighttime temperatures above the ground frost level in southern England, but a minority are suggesting it will be cold enough even as we head towards the end of April for ground frost in southern parts of England. So certainly something to keep an eye on. To look at the same chart for Glasgow, what we can see here is, and again I've annotated it to highlight the risk of ground frost. All the runs are going for frost in the short term. We then see that warming trend appearing here, but even during that period and beyond it, many of the runs are forecasting temperatures to be low enough for ground frost to continue to be a risk. So farmers and growers probably should be keeping a close eye on the day-to-day forecasts as we head through the next couple of weeks. Rainfall is something which I've discussed in the 16-day context. It looks like being closer to the norm in the north and west, where we have those Atlantic incursions, at least for a time. Even there, though, even in general terms, it's not looking at all wet across the United Kingdom, particularly in the southeast, where, as I say, those Atlantic frontal systems may not really have much impact at all. So I just wanted to show the 35-day rainfall forecast chart from the GEFS, because this takes us through the first half of May. And what I've pointed out is a possibility of it becoming somewhat wetter in late April during the last week. We saw on the 16-day plots, and this continues the theme. What we can see here is that wetter trend in late April, as I highlighted, but then through the first half of May, it looks significantly wetter. So this is for London, but charts for other locations across the UK are also showing a wetter picture through the first half of May. It's a long way off. Don't take this at face value. I'm only using it to show what the current model data is going for, the current GEFS model data is going for as we head into May. Possibly a change of pattern to a more to one where high pressures having much less influence on the weather in the UK. As I say, we'll see. It's just something to keep an eye on. So to summarise the next 14 days, it's a mainly dry start, although there will be some showers around. Later on, the risk of rain in the north and west increases. That probably spreads southeastwards, but there's some uncertainty about how much of the rain will reach central and southeastern England. Probably not a great deal. Temperatures often on the low side, although in sunny spells it should feel quite pleasant. Perhaps becoming somewhat warmer in the southern half of the UK for a time, although there is that chance that towards the end of the week, cooler air from the northwest will be returning southeastwards. The second week, daytime temperatures are more likely to be above the average, so it could potentially feel quite warm on some days. Nights are likely to remain chilly, and frost is a possibility, particularly in the north. Should be mainly dry early on with high pressure dominating, but towards the end of the week, the risk of rain could be increasing, especially in the north and the west. So there we have it. That's the summary, and I think it looks somewhat more spring-like than it has done recently. Temperatures fluctuating, often closer to what we would expect at this time of the year. Rainfall amounts on the whole remaining quite low. So I hope you enjoyed this forecast. If you did, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thanks very much for watching now. Bye.